Welcome to USTA Cyber YouTube channel.
In today's tutorial we will discuss about Unix, Linux operating systems in details. These are some contents of our discussions, mainly include 1. Introduction to Unix and Linux. What is operating system? Features of operating system. What is Unix and Linux? 2. Brief history of Unix and Linux. 3. Components of Linux. 4. Linux versus Unix. 5. Linux distributions. 6. Features of Linux. First of all, we will understand about operating systems and their functions. What is operating system? An operating system is the program that, after being initially loaded into the computer by a boot program, manages all of the other application programs in a computer. The application programs make use of the operating system by making requests for services, through a defined application program interface, API. In addition, users can interact directly with the operating system through a user interface, such as a command line interface, CLI, or a graphical user interface. Operating system manages activities and resources of a computer software, that acts as an interface between hardware and user, provides a layer of abstraction for application developers. Features of operating system. Number 1. Memory management. Number 2. Operating system have a functionality of managing file system, disk management, network access and network management. Number 3. An interface to communicate with hardware. Number 4. Multitasking, an ability of the system to execute multiple computer programs. Number 5. A user interface, through which a user can interact with the system using command line interface or graphical user interface. What is Unix? Unix was developed based on the philosophy that the power of the system comes from the relationships among programs, rather than on the programs themselves. Unix programs are written to do one thing well, and programs are written so that they work together. As such, Unix developers put simplicity, portability and clarity in design. What is Linux? Linux operating systems are based on Unix, an open-source and community-developed operating system. Almost all major computer platforms, including x86, ARM, and SPARC, support it, making it one of the most widely supported operating systems on the market. Brief history of Unix and Linux. The Unix operating system was born in the late 1960s. It originally began as a one-man project led by Kenneth Thompson of Bell Labs. The operating system was soon christened Unix, a pun on an earlier operating system project called MULTICS. In 1972 to 1973, the system was rewritten in the programming language C, an unusual step that was visionary. Due to this decision, Unix was the first widely used operating system that could switch from and outlive its original hardware. In the time since Unix was first developed, it has gone through many different generations and even mutations. Some differ substantially from the original version, like Berkeley Software Distribution, BSD, or Linux. 1991, first Linux kernel written in C by Linus Torvalds, University of Helsinki, Finland. First message about it posted on August 25, first release in September, while others still contain major portions that are based on the original source code. An interesting and rather up-to-date timeline of these variations of Unix can be found at link mentioned below. Components of Linux. In this section I will explain the main components of Linux. Linux operating system has primarily three components. First component is a kernel. Kernel is the core part of Linux. It is responsible for all major activities of this operating system. System library. System libraries are special functions or programs using which application programs, or system utilities accesses kernel's features. System utility. System utility programs are responsible to do specialized, individual-level tasks. Let's talk about some differences between Linux and Unix. Number 1. Linux is open source and is developed by Linux community of developers, while Unix was developed by AT&T Bell Labs and is not open source. Number 2. Linux is free to use while Unix is licensed operating system. Number 3. Linux support file system like ext2, ext3, ext4, JFS, RicerFS, XFS, BTRFS, FAT, FAT32, NTFS, while Unix support FS, GPFS, HFS, HFS+, UFS, XFS and ZFS. Number 4. Linux uses KDE and GNOME. Other graphical user interface supported are LXDE, XFCE, Unity, Mate, and Unix was initially a command-based operating system. Most of the Unix distributions now have GNOME. Number 5. Usage. Linux is used in wide varieties from desktop, servers, smartphones to mainframes, and Unix is mostly used on servers, workstations or personal computers. Number 6. Default shell. Bash, Bourne Again shell, is default shell for Linux, and Unix use Bourne as a default shell. Number 7. Target processors. Linux was initially developed for Intel's x86 hardware processors. Now it supports 20-plus processor families, and Unix supports PA RISC and Itanium family. Ubuntu, Debian GNU, Arch Linux are the example of Linux, and Sunos, Solaris, SCO Unix, X, HP, UX are some examples of Unix operating system. Linux distributions. Let's discuss some most frequently used Linux flavors, mainly includes Corel Linux, Debian GNU, Linux, Ubuntu, Fedora, CentOS, Open Linux, Caldera, Red Hat, Slackware, and Turbo Linux. Now talk about some features, why we use Linux. Number 1. Linux is portable. Portability means software can works on different types of hardware in same way. Linux kernel and application programs supports their installation on any kind of hardware platform. Number 2. Linux is an open source operating systems. That means Linux source code is freely available, and it is community-based development project. Multiple teams work in collaboration to enhance the capability of Linux operating system, and it is continuously evolving. Number 3. Multi-user. Linux support multi-user system means multiple users can access system resources like memory, RAM, application programs, at same time. Number 4. Linux provide multi-programming. Multi-programming system means multiple applications can be loaded at same time. Number 5. Hierarchical file system. Linux provides a standard file structure in which system files and user files are arranged. Number 6. A shell. Linux provides a special interpreter program, which can be used to execute commands of the operating system. It can be used to do various types of operations, call application programs. Number 7. Linux provides user security using authentication features, like password protection, controlled access to specific files and encryption of data. Hopefully this tutorial is informative for you. If yes, please like, share and subscribe my YouTube channel. Thanks for watching.